Anyway, how are you? Thanks for coming.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I thought we'd start with what got you into drums. Like, what's your earliest memory of what inspired you to pick up the drums?
That's very easy. I don't know if you remember the in the early '90s there were Zildjian Day festivals. You know those? So my dad is like has been a hobby musician for a while. He was a bass player in a Deep Purple cover band. Uh, he was super into music, and he had a friend who was very big into percussion, and he had these two VHS tapes of Zildjian Day. One of them was Zildjian Day, I think '93. The one with Chambers, Greg Bissonette, Trilo Gurtu, and Simon Phillips. He had that VHS. He just basically stole it, and I would just watch that tape all the way through, rewind it back, watch it again, rewind it back, watch it again. That was one thing that really steered me that way. And the other thing is, I don't know if you do. How well do you know Deep Purple?
Not super well.
Not super well. They have one live album called Made in Japan that is like one of the best live albums ever. And in that album, there's one song called "The Mule" that has a drum solo, and I would just loop that drum solo over and over and over again.
Is that Ian Pace?
Yeah, I was completely obsessed with that drum solo. So the both together, and I started playing when I was 8. Yeah, when you're that age, it's kind of like everyone wants to play something, like so you start like hitting stuff, and I was just lucky enough that my parents were like, "Yeah, sure, play drums." So the parents shouldn't be saying, but they were like, "Can I play drums?" Sure. Oh, okay.
Yeah. What would you say to your young self now? Like, if you could travel back in time, what's different about the way your career turned out and what ended up succeeding for you to make a career versus what you expected at a young age?
That's a hard point. I mean, growing up in the like '90s, early 2000s, I wanted to be a studio drummer. Like that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be, the guy that lives in some studio and just has to deal with whatever is thrown at him, kind of, because I saw that thing that was happening, and that like it was a thing. It was relevant, and it's very much not relevant anymore at all. Uh, so I know when I was a teenager, at some point, I started to figure, oh, maybe I want to just be in a. I was like huge into Metallica and Dream Theater and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, maybe I just want to be in a band, and that's it. But then very quickly I realized that I don't really want to just be in one band and play one thing. So I just defaulted back to that dream of being a studio musician, which just doesn't exist anymore. So I had to really like give up that dream in order to. I kind of do what I want. I hate when Zoom does that. I kind of do what I want to do now musically, but it felt like I had to give up that dream in order to just realize that, oh, there's a different way to do what I want to do, and that was the one. It was a hard process. It shouldn't have been that hard, maybe, but it was. It felt like giving up on something, even though it's not really that.
Yeah, I think that's deep. Yeah, you have to. I think the biggest growth periods happen when you're willing to take a leap and free yourself from what you thought you wanted. Like, there are a lot of constraints that hold us in one place because we're afraid that if we deviate, things could get worse. But in order for things to get much better, we have to risk them getting worse.
Yes, and there's that. It's hard to like disappoint your younger self in a way, even though it's your younger self doesn't know that what he wants is not relevant anymore.
If you were speaking to a class of second graders, how would you describe what your day to day is now? Like what the median of what you do on the drums is?
In the past few years have been quite transformative in that way. I went from kind of thinking of that my goal should be playing as much as I can. That's the goal, which led me to be playing. I played back, especially back when I was back in Israel. I played a lot, everything. I just played every day, everything, everything from the occasional like pop gig, cover bands. I was and anyone who needed basically drums, I was playing. So I was playing all the time. But in the past few years, it kind of that whole thing really shifted, where I really understood that I don't want to be playing all the time at all. I do want to only be playing the stuff that I want to play, and the stuff that I want to play is very specific. My taste in the things I like to perform are very specific, and not like things that would make me. I can't make a living out of that. There's no way. And in a way, it's like, but that's fine. I should find other ways to make money, and because I just started being like, hey, I'm living my dream. I'm playing all the time. I have some money, sure, but I'm not liking this at all. Like when I have a day off, I don't go to the drums to play. It's like, no. Let's just go outside. Let's just go ride my bike, whatever. And it's like I used to like just playing, and I don't like doing that anymore. So I just started realizing that I just want to play whatever I want to play, which is very little things. It's not very few things that I'm really excited about playing. And nowadays I play way less than I used to, and I love it because I only play things that I really like. I'm starting to find other avenues for income. So it doesn't depend. My playing has nothing to do with money, even though I do a lot of sessions and touring and all that. Obviously I get paid, but that's not where my financial focus comes from. So my day-to-day now is kind of both. I'm back in the now I'm gonna be starting back in the YouTube world with my channel, and between that and teaching, and I love teaching as well, teaching and workshops and stuff like that, so I do that a lot as well. So it's basically just a combination of all three.
That makes sense. If somebody was interested in throttling back from playing every single gig and wanted to do something similar to what you've done in terms of choosing their opportunities, do you feel like the best way to do that is through band leading? Like, are most of the projects that you've used to create your own avenues where you can do those specific things that excite you, things that you started yourself, or did you luck into some scenarios where you were already playing with groups of people who are doing the types of things you wanted to do?
I don't band lead at all. I never did. I don't really want to. This is also another thing that took me a while to be comfortable with. I love being a sideman, but seriously love being a sideman. The few projects that I'm in, maybe I'm a little bit more than a sideman because I'm involved in the arranging and all that. I don't write music. I wrote one piece in school. It even came out well. I just didn't enjoy any of that process. That process didn't do anything for me. I don't really like writing. I really like arranging. So the few projects that I play in now, I'm completely a sideman, but I'm very much part of the music creation side of those projects, though they each have their own, because it's not my name on it, it's a different, either a person's name or just a band with a style. There's a style that it goes, there's a style that I need to adapt to. I like adapting to things. I like playing the just like different genres with different aesthetics. Aesthetics is such a hard word to say. I like those differences. The difference between playing a huge hall with a metal band, where you need to really realize that there's a lot of technicalities that goes into switching from playing a small restaurant gig with like maple sticks, dry cymbals, a lot of ghost notes, everyone hears everything you do, to going to play in a hall of whatever, 2,000, 3,000 people, where every snare hit has a 3-second reverb. You can't really do ghost notes because that's a mess now. All the cymbals are brighter. I like that change. So I like putting myself in those scenarios where a band has some identity, and I kind of fit myself into that. Obviously, I bring whatever my world is, I bring it to every one of those groups. But that's the way I'm so like I'm kind of a sideman, but a little bit more than that, and I love that position.
At what points during your development do you feel like you made the biggest jumps? I.e., if you had to revert to a saved game, like an earlier version of Yogev, like after what year would it be crucial that you reverted to? And just to give you an example, like I'd probably need to revert to like the 2023 version of myself earliest, because I feel like I made a big jump around 2015, 2016, and then another big jump between 2020 and maybe 2024. And those jumps were in my 30s and 40s respectively. And maybe if we go back in time, like there was another jump between high school or I'm sorry, between college and grad school. Part of the reason I'm asking this is I'm slightly obsessed with like prodigies versus late bloomers. So it's leading me to investigate at what points in their development some of my favorite players made their biggest jumps. But I'm wondering how you'd respond to that.
I actually saw some of the development you're talking about on. I follow your YouTube channel completely. I see a bunch of your stuff, so I saw some of the stuff you're talking about. I feel like I've been a late bloomer in everything I do, basically. Uh, Everything. It's crazy. We shouldn't go into details, but everything. I'm late in like to everything. Not late in terms of you know what I mean. But I don't think that I really had. I think it was just like a steady. I think that it's not a specific area, but I think me starting recording was so. I recorded my first album. I was in the army, so 2009 or 2008 was the first. I joined. That was like the first. I joined my first serious prog band. I was 19, I think, something like that. And my first I recorded one single before with some local band before, and I loved it, but that was my first time going to a studio recording like a 70-minute album, prog, playing all the notes all the time, way overplaying over everything. Yeah. I think I started recording a lot ever since, and I think every recording session is one of those points. I think for me, record because that was the first time that you don't just hear yourself back, from a phone or something. You hear yourself really well, and then you really like, oh shit, my ghost notes are so loud. I don't even hear the accents anymore. Or, oh my god, this is whatever. You hear everything so well, and for me, those are the best stepping stones. The other one might be. Justin Scott?
Yeah.
He's like the best drummer on the planet. I love his playing so much. You have no idea. I took a lesson with him maybe 4 years ago, maybe. And till that point, when I would practice, I would just basically go and play, either just play or just work on things that really keep my mind busy. So I all of the weird subdivisions, all of the polyrhythms, all of those stuff that basically just keep your head going, but not really my hands. After I took the lesson with him, he showed me his warm-up routine. It's just his warm-up routine. I've been practicing his warm-up routine ever since. That was the first time that I actually started practicing things that are very dry and technical on the drums, just very independent stuff. I've never done those things before. And starting that, I really felt suddenly way more control. I don't know if it really translates outside, but I felt a very, very big leap in how comfortable I am just sitting and playing. So yeah, so maybe those.
I think a feeling of control definitely translates into our playing. Like, even if you isolated a single stroke, that you feel better playing one stroke but an outside observer can't tell the difference between Yogev with the old technique and Yogev with the new technique. But in a continuum of all the things you play, that feeling of extra control and confidence definitely has to add up to you feeling more free and taking more risks.
I'm sure it does. Yeah, I wonder how much it's from the outside. I can't really tell. For me, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, I've speaking of Justin Scott, I love the way his hands look, and I've been completing a similar journey with my hands, in particular my left hand, where
Damned left hand. Yeah.
yeah, it's no longer adequate for it just to kind of hang on and do its own thing. I really want to transfer a lot of the knowledge and feeling, for instance, from playing the ride cymbal with the right hand into the left hand. So I've become kind of obsessed with the way the left hand feels, and I've kind of structured a almost like a free form improvisational warm up just around chasing the correct feeling with the left hand and then sitting in that sweet spot when I find it. So I'm curious, after you studied with Justin and you started doing these more sort of regimented warm ups, what do you think is the biggest thing that changed about your hand technique and the way you approach hands?
I think it's exactly what you said. Is there's obviously a very clear difference in feeling between my right hand and my left hand. I can do everything with my right hand. I can do nothing with my left hand. So there's there is a difference. And I think through his exercises, because his exercises are he so effortlessly just mentions how he switches between both, and he plays at some point I saw him playing with a right cymbal on his left as well, which I think I still do. Yeah, I still do. So I have both of them here, and sometimes I will just go and lead with my left just to feel how weird it is. Suddenly you're like, oh, my shoulder hurts. It's like, of course, because I'm used to doing this, but I'm not used to doing this. So suddenly even the bigger muscles hurt. So he just kind of opened the awareness of the difference in feel, I think. And also the other side, the other way around as well. Like my right hand really sucks at ghost notes. Which is like, I'm supposed to be good with my right hand, but it's like it just doesn't do the right things on the snare, which my left hand just does. So I think I'm still in the middle of that. I'm still doing that same, parts of his same exercises. His exercises are amazing, and I really feel like I don't think my left hand would ever get to the point where I feel comfortable, being an open hand player. I don't think I will get there. I don't think it's my goal as well, but it's definitely the gap is getting not smaller, but less huge.
Yeah, same. And I think a big part of it for me too is just it was neglected for so long. And tell me if this resonates. I would even put up with sort of grip creep up and down the stick with the left hand. So where it didn't feel completely comfortable. So I would notice my fulcrum creeping up the stick, and I would have to readjust. And yeah, just recently I'm like, nope, no more of that. So, and it's also interesting trying to retrofit a change into your playing while you're doing sessions and gigs and everything else, and you still have to perform.
Yeah. For me, that's very evident with my kick drum technique. My kick drum technique is, to say it bluntly, not great. And I started playing double pedal way too early, just because that's what I thought was cool, because. So even if I had to do like a basic punk groove to cut, I would do it with both feet. So my right foot has been a problem for a while, because it hasn't had enough practice when I was a teenager, for sure. Only recently, not recently, but maybe the past 10 years, I started completely ditching the double pedal. I actually got it back because I played with it a little bit, but very, 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 very little. And exactly what you said about the shifting while you're playing, I'm working on changing my bass drum technique, and at some I'm in the very annoying middle section where I'm not sure which one is more comfortable, but I don't want to fuck the gig up. So it's like I'm not, and sometimes it's just like I don't know which one. I don't know if to do this one or do this one. I don't know what to do now. At some point, I'm sure it's gonna just switch to the new technique would be the like prominent one. Uh, that's the biggest one. Of suddenly I have to think about it. It's like, oh, now I have a quick like 2 note thing coming up. What am I doing? How am I supposed to sit? Like I'm not sure suddenly. So it's that's been a little bit annoying, but I'm sure it's gonna pass soon.
Yeah, of course. I'm actually interested in deep diving into this a little bit because one thing that's all of a sudden come up with a lot of my students is doubles on the kick drum and that being a bottleneck. And I think that's maybe because like I have kind of a cohort of people, all of whom sort of mastered chopping at a slower tempo. So like my whole thing was like I want to create a tribe of people who can play like Eric Moore stuff at like half the tempo Eric plays it. But now we're like trying to bring people's tempo up and pretty reliably everybody's finding the kick drum the obstacle. So that's caused me to have to like reverse engineer like, okay, well let me see a video of this guy's foot. Okay, what am I doing differently? So I'm super curious from your perspective if there are any insights you've teased out of this transformation and like what you're changing in your technique and how that's helped.
I think the main thing was the way I sit, because I used to sit very very like deep outside of the chair, kind of, and now I basically just sit with like my butt is on all the way, not all the way back, but maybe middle of the seat and backwards, which frees up my feet a little bit more.
So more weight on your tailbone, less weight on your
Yes.
on the balls of your
Yeah,
feet.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I just figured out that kind of just like being in the that middle, it doesn't feel great for me. So I do lean a little bit to my left, which I'm fine with because my hi-hat foot is way less detailed, let's say, because what I play with my hi-hat, I play whatever, quarter notes, eighth notes, dotted eighth notes. That's basically it.
Yeah, not doubles very often, right?
And no. But that really that puts a lot of like tension on my left foot and frees up my right foot a lot. So that was the first and main thing I did. But then seeing Justin Scott play, he has a foot cam sometimes. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I noticed that between hits, he rests his heel. Like his foot is just fully down, which I've never done before. I was always like a beater to the head person, where if I don't play, it's still my foot is still there. I'm trying to see if I can switch to that, just that way of playing the kick drum. It's difficult. It's whatever 20 something years of playing it one way, and now just starting to think about it in the other way. That's pretty hard. But I think it's for the better. We'll see.
The other thing is we can get away with a lot of bullshit in our 20s. We can sort of run on borrowed time with suboptimal techniques. And I think about a lot of this where like if you see great drummers in the 80s, a lot of them have setups that are like not the most ergonomically sound, but they just look really cool. And then reliably, as you see them get older, the setups tend to just become more sort of ergonomically oriented.
Yeah.
I think I'm on a similar page with the kick drum, and a lot that I've been accomplishing with spring tension. So like actually I worked with a teacher a couple of years ago who I was partnering with in a coaching program named Jacob Evans. I don't even know if he drums anymore, but he was a fantastic teacher. And his whole thing was like the spring tension should be high enough that you can rest your whole leg on the foot plate, and the beater's like an inch or more from the head. So I took that and ran with it, and I guess I'm kind of creating the cult of high spring tension. But I suppose there are other ways of doing it. Yeah.
I mean, I was I was never too big into manipulating gear because I didn't think it was an issue till I started. The first pedals I used to play are the Iron Cobras, the Tama, which are super heavy. And then suddenly I went to one of my teacher's house and he had, what are these pedals called? A super cheap pearl pedals. P9930, something like that.
The workhorse.
Completely super cheap, super great, and I play on them, and it's like, oh, this feels completely different, like completely different. Suddenly, I realized that pedals and settings do mean something. I switched to those pedals. It's been a little bit better, but now since I'm starting to kind of try that approach with resting my foot and trying not to be on the beater all the time,
Right.
I'm not sure I like these anymore. And it's like suddenly I'm like, I had this one gig that someone brought an Iron Cobra, and my first response was like, oh my god, whatever. Then I play it, it's like, this, I kind of like the weight. Suddenly I like it more. So I'm experimenting with that. I'm gonna try the spring thing that you said. I'm curious to see if it does anything, because these feel just too loose. Kind of like I'll pick up my foot. They just do whatever they want, and they don't even go back. There's a bunch of there's a lot of adjusting I need to do with these pedals. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing I also wanted to pick your brain about was the sort of groove versus improvisation distinction, which for jazz drummers might be less of a thing because we're sort of improvising no matter what we play. But I think on the internet at large, there's this whole like pocket versus chops thing, and of course, like chops is somewhat stigmatized, and yeah, one of my pet peeves over the years has been this idea that there isn't a very scientific approach to teaching or learning improvisation in drum books and so forth. Like pretty much the previous gen of improv has always just been, yeah, we'll mostly focus on groove, but also learn your rudiments, and that'll just come out in your improvisation. So I'm curious how that lands with you and what you've practiced over the years and recently in terms of improvisation.
I never I never actually practiced improvisation. So like exercises, the way I got better improvising to the extent that I'm good at improvising, um, is just by playing. I think maybe starting when I started playing the more jazzy stuff that I do, and suddenly you get a vamp and you have a solo, which if I had a solo, I played some solos when I was in the more prog stuff that I did, but they're very much like a section of a song. You have whatever. This is the riff you're playing over. It's 8 bars. It has a very very distinct like arrangement purpose. It's a high point, or it's supposed to like throw you to a high point, or maybe it throws you to back to a. So it's improvised, but you would write something out, and in those shows and those bands, I probably play the same breaks or fills all the time, so it doesn't really feel like improvising. When I started playing the more jazzy stuff, I started getting vamps, and now it's like, here's a vamp, play a solo and cue us out, basically. That's where I started really tuning into at least the way I improvise, and the way I did that is I basically just I take the vamp and I create a 58-minute track of the vamp. Just loop it and listen to it for forever. The first thing I do is just keep time with my hi-hat and see if I can just hit all the necessary hits, if it's like a hits-based vamp. Once I do that, I just start playing over it, giving myself like some kind of assignments, kind of. So I'll play just a most regular groove and just play the kick on the hits, and then I'll play fills that end on maybe on this hit, and then a fill that ends on this hit, and then a fill that ends on. I do all of that just in order to get used to get the vamp really in my head. There's no practical or like drum specific reason for me to do that, because I'm not going to be playing those things in a gig. I just want to get the vamp in my head, that to a point where I'm really comfortable just hearing it, especially if it's a harder one, if it's weird syncopations or whatever. After I do that, and I get to a point where my head, like my ears, know the vamp really well, that's where I just, let's say I get to that point in the gig, I'll start playing something, and I really like, one thing that I really like is since I started playing the more jazzy stuff, diving into jazz improvisation, is that jazz players, as opposed to the the metal and rock players that I grew up listening to, there's a very it's very clear that the arc of the way you think is way bigger. So instead of, let's say my vamp is, I don't know, it repeats 16 times, I don't think about it as 16 small solos. It's one big solo that just happened to be in this kind of length. And I really like that approach of one big thing instead of repeated small things. So what I started doing is I'm going to play a solo that basically has nothing to do with this vamp. I'm just going to start, telling, how people say telling a story. I hate that people say it, but I understand why, because I say it as well. So I'm going to start saying something, whatever I want to say. I'm going to let it develop in its own time. But because I know the vamp so well, I'm going to hit those key points. So, that way, that's something that I really like. When I hear myself play, that's something that I really like doing. It's like, when you hear, especially if it's a long vamp, you hear the vamp coming back, the one of the vamp, and I'm not necessarily done with an idea. The fact that the one arrived doesn't really mean that I'm now stopping what I did. I'm continuing I might skip over the one and hit the next one or whatever, but my development, the solo development, has its own path, kind of. But because I know the vamp so well, I'm gonna hit those points when necessary. So it sounds. I just really like that sound. There's one thing that really just takes its time and does its thing, regardless to the music. But I always connect it back because I listen to the vamp so much. I kind of always connect it back to because the musicians also need me to kind of show that I know where I am, I know what I'm doing. I'm not just listening to the radio, play something else. It's not that. But those two things happen simultaneously, and then a cool thing that I like happen when I see a bunch of these players play stuff like this is I lose count of how many vamps I listen to. You know how there's a very clear feeling of, oh, this is the 4th time, this is the 8th time.
Yeah.
I don't like feeling that when someone is soloing. I don't want to know how many times. I want the solo to take my attention. And when that happens, and sometimes I hear myself play and that thing happens. I'm not sure how many, what's that? Is it the 3rd one? Is it the 4th one? I'm not sure. And I'm not supposed to care. So that's great. And I really like that feeling. So that's the only way I kind of worked on improv.
I think you described that really well in a way that resonates. And I would add that it's not necessarily just a vamp or a clave you play over that you try to internalize so well you forget it and you can just sort of speak musical sentences, but have one part of your brain, your peripheral vision, focused on where that vamp or clave is. And you can also be relaxed and just be comfortable letting the phrase evolve to where it's going to go, and seeing that waypoint of where it needs to land, or where the reference point for the band, sort of like passing your side view mirror without needing to devote too much energy at it. There's kind of an equanimity you develop. But I would say that's also true when you talk about different rhythmic subdivisions. Like I was working on doubled triplets for these past few weeks. Like the idea of taking like a Percaro shuffle and then improvising over it at double the rate of the and that has a different feeling than if you double the tempo and play triplets over it, like it's a hip hop shuffle or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't simplify to the quarter note. It simplifies to the triplet.
Yes.
And what I found, that made me acutely aware of what I was doing in other contexts where I was more comfortable. Where if I'm soloing in sixteenths or sextuplets, in most meters, it feels like those two simultaneous stories. Where like I have the instinct of where the meter is and where one's going to fall, and I can kind of just let my hands follow a shape. Like I'm architecting this shape in real time, and it's permutating and twisting and turning, and like the resolution points are all over the place, but I don't lose my orientation of where up is and where down is. But when I'm in this less familiar rhythmic context, it felt like the phrases needed to be shorter, otherwise I would lose my orientation. And I think like, yeah, you described it really well. Something like that's happening in probably every context when we're learning to improvise.
And I think that the for me at least, the second I'm put into a situation where I'm not as comfortable, you just hear it. You hear that, you know, the one of the vamp comes back, and I will accent it in some way. Maybe I won't, you know, slam the crash or something, but I'll do something, because it's like I need it to feel where I am, and you really hear it. When you were talking, I was remembering Aaron Spears. I went to an Aaron Spears clinic, I don't know, a gazillion years ago, and he said it's something similar, that for him he would think of just driving in a street where you see the stoplights but they're all green. You keep on driving. If you just don't look at the street, you feel like you're just going, but like there's an intersection. It passed. I saw it. I can wave at it. I can stop. I cannot stop. It's there, but I can also just go straight. I don't have to really stop and go and stop and go and stop and go. It's just a smooth drive, and I can choose what to do. And that analogy was really, really, it's like, I know what I'm going to do for the next 17 years. Thank you. Like, yeah, it was very, so yeah, and exactly the same as what you said. When I started playing, and there's a project that I do that there's a few songs in septuplets, just because we wanted to try. And obviously I'm not as comfortable with that meter, and you hear it. I play, it's way less relaxed. It's way less. Suddenly, when a song is in septuplets, I suddenly realize that, because it's in septuplets, now I can't play any other subdivision. But when I'm playing in eighth notes or something, I play a triplet here, I play sextuplets here, I play whatever. But now, because I'm in septuplets, I can't play anything else. Like, it's just that. It's because I'm not comfortable with it enough yet. So it's all those, and it's a lot of it is ears, just listening to those things.
Yeah, one more question before I let you go. I feel like if someone took all of our advice literally and just went in the shad without listening to any other drummers, they'd probably come out doing like a sloppier approximation of what you do. But what you do also has a precision to it, a precision of subdivision. And I think some of my earliest exposure to you was some of your Tigran covers, and routinely you play music that requires a high degree of precision, or at least like shines because of a high degree of precision. Like you could do a sloppier cover of them, but they wouldn't have that sort of snap that gives them that effervescence. And I'm just curious, was that something you needed to practice deliberately, or do you feel like that was just innate and it was kind of the water you were swimming in to be able to have that sort of precision with the subdivision and the upbeat, downbeat, and like resting for the exact right amount of time, etc.
Thank you, first of all. I think I always had a really, really good. My attention to detail is very, very sharp, both visually and with my ears. So I didn't really have a chance but to play. There's no way I'm gonna play things. It's not an option. I play in tempos that are disgustingly slow all the time when I practice stuff. Just because of that. Just because winging it is not in my vocabulary at all. I don't know how to do that. So I've always, for sure, I've always taken the time to do the switch between 16th notes and triplets and make them feel. All the rhythmic pyramids, all those things, I do those, or used to do those a lot. And a lot of it has to do, again, with listening, with my ears, and trying to understand what people are doing and how things really, really sound. So when I go to the drums now and I switch from 16th notes to triplets, I used to slow down as well. Because I think, for going from 4 to 3, you slow down. you don't really slow down the tempo. You play less hits, sure. Now I feel like my tempo is really, really steady, and the play between subdivisions is it's getting better all the time, and there's no way that I'll release something that is not doesn't go over like my threshold of detail. You just won't see it. I know I fuck up things all the time. Or if you listen to me outside of this door, it sucks most of the time. But my practice level is way high. I practice things that are hard for me, obviously, so I don't sound as good. Mm-hmm. The things that I release are things that I'm really comfortable with, and yeah, the precision is something that I work a lot with, and work a lot with click and manipulating click. Besides the switching the click to the E and the and the I and all those things, I do a bunch of other click manipulation stuff that I really like. I can show you if you want. Really, really cool things that really show me where I'm speeding up, where I'm slowing down. And I've developed some exercises for that really help me in that kind of like regard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that subject, yeah. What are your top 3 click manipulations that have been helping you recently, if you're willing to share?
So I think I used to do a lot of the putting the click in different places. I started, instead of putting the click in different place, I would at some point I stopped practicing with a click, and I would practice with 90s 2000s hip hop playlist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of a click, because I would just, all of those tempos are relatively the same, between like 80 and 100 and something ish. And sometimes I would want to practice things that are either faster or slower. But what I would do is, it's like, okay, I want to practice this, whatever, 6-note figure, let's say. I put on whatever song, and it's like, if in this song, the good tempo for me is 6 tuplets, I'll practice it in 6 tuplets. Then a song changes, I'm still practicing the same thing, but the song is way slower. Now I'm going to practice it in 30-second notes. Same phrase, because that's the speed that according to that song fits well. Suddenly, instead of practicing with just like a one speed, I'm practicing to songs, which feels way cooler. But the other thing is, I transform between subdivisions all the time, playing the same things, which kind of, and each one has its own feel. The difference between let's say that's just a 6, and that, I might be playing the same phrase, but just because I was forced to switch it because of the song tempo changed. That's one thing that I really, really like to do. So I do the same exercise in different subdivisions, and suddenly I'll find a tempo that the 16th notes is too slow and 6 tuplets is too fast. It's like, okay, we're going quintuplets for this one, and it's really hard. Suddenly you have to play a 6-note phrase in quintuplets over a song that is in 16th notes. It's just, my brain has to stay stimulated. So my brain is very happy with all those things. My body, not so much, because it's really hard to play. But I those really, really help me. But the exercise that I really like with the metronome is, how when you go to practice, the first 5 minutes you just do stuff, and then there's a point of like, okay, I should be serious. Okay, and then you put the metronome and you do whatever those things. I always felt that I should do something with that initial energy. I want to do something with that, because I want, the first thing when I sit, I want to play. So what I've been doing is, I've been putting the metronome between 20 and 30. There's one click, every 2 days. It's a super long time. I randomly pick a subdivision, a time signature, and I randomly pick a beat within that time signature. Just randomly every day, the second I sit. So I sit.
So 5/4 septuplets.
No, I'm not into the septuplets yet with this exercise.
Oh, I see.
But I will do
okay, 5/4 as the number of beats between these two metronome strikes, and then we're going to play sextuplets in that meter.
Not that kind of subdivision. So I'll say, okay, 5/4 is the meter, and the click would be beat 4.5, end of beat 4. So you'll hear you'll just hear like
1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
yeah, but you get the click first. So you just get this, whatever this is, and then it's like, okay, I need to play in. I'm gonna play today at 9, and the click is beat 2. Now I have to figure out how this. First of all, I have to figure out how fast 9 is in that tempo, and then this has to be beat 2. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. For example, and then I just play. I improvise over that where that's my only click marking. That exercise has been amazing for me. So the first thing I do is just establishing a groove and not speeding up is really hard. So that takes me a while. When I play a few repetitions and it feels good, I allow myself to play a fill. And a fill might be taka-ish. That's it. Because I have to do that, and I have, I land on 1, but the click is not on 1, the click is on 2. So taka-dish tik. I have to make sure that that lands well. If it lands well, I'll do a slightly longer fill. A lot of times it doesn't land well, and then you're like, okay, if it doesn't land well, I'm gonna do the same fill till it lands well. Because I don't know why. If it's something that starts with my left hand, I'm probably slowing down. If it's one of the 6-stroke rolls that I'm really used to, I'm probably speeding up. And that, when you have one click, that really shows you how bad you are, kind of. Because when you have this, there's no way I'm gonna slow down or speed up when I hear this. But when I hear this, I have to play. And then you suddenly play something. You think you're super cool, fancy. And the click is like right after you. It's like, oh boy. You have to find your way back, play the same fill till you get it to really land on the click. That exercise, I love that exercise. It's amazing, and I often that 3-minute like noodling before practicing ends up being like 30 minutes just because it's so fun. And it's just like, no, I have to do this one again. I have to do this one again. This one again. Suddenly you realize, oh wow! Every time I start a fill with my kick drum, I speed up every time, or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. So that exercise really, really helped me with. I love that exercise. I really like it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that sort of thing too. Well, listen, we could chat all day, and it would be super fun to do a part 2. But I have to let you go. Where would you send people to check out what you've got going on?
Probably YouTube. I'm gonna be back with my time-consuming series with all the breaking down all the rhythms from songs and all that. I'm back doing a little bit more drum videos as well. At some point, I would maybe play something in a video, and people would say like, "Oh, I didn't know you're a drummer." And it's like, "Excuse me, what do you mean?" That's okay. Oh, of course, because I released 80 episodes without playing anything, and I didn't release drum videos lately. So probably my YouTube channel is the best place for all of those. Yeah.
Sweet, can't wait. People should search your Meinl videos as well.
Yeah, I did 2 sessions. You did one recently, right? Another one.
Yeah, can't wait to see it.
We played the same kit, I think. I did one right after you.
Oh, on the Maple Custom?
Yeah, like last year.
Love that kit.
Yeah, completely.
Well, so great finally chatting.
Completely.
It's been super cool, like mining all of these practice tips. I'm sure people will find it valuable.
Great.
So hopefully we'll do a part 2 at some point, but thanks again and have a great rest of your day.
For sure. You too. Thank you.